All right, in this video, we're going to go through how I control Resolume using EOS software. This is a Nomad setup. Within Resolume Arena, you'll go into preferences, and you do need to be using the Arena versus the Avenue. There's different features that are available between the two of them that change. The first I'll click here is OSC, so we're going to make sure OSC is enabled with that port and that IP address, and then that will be mirrored over in EOS. So I'll click on Settings. We'll go to System Settings. And then under Show Control, OSC, you'll see the OSC UDP TX IP addresses, and I'll click on that. We're sending out to several devices, but you can see right here the 10.7, 15.211, which actually this computer has both IP addresses, so it responds on both. So you have it listed in there, but typically you'll have those two IP addresses matching. And then if you need to have multiples, you just put a space and then a colon if you need an alternate port number. Otherwise, it's going to use this default port, which is 55555. But you can send OSC to multiple devices. You can also do more advanced things by looking at the OSC router. That's part of the ETC Labs product. But we are set up in EOS to send to OSC. And then the second thing is regarding ArtNet. So we'll take a look at that. And we're going to find that under DMX. I'll click on DMX, and they've also has this concept of Lumiverses. And so under Lumiverse 1, we have a channel offset of 0, a subnet of 0, and a universe of 11. And we give it a node name and the network adapter that we're using for that. And then in case you didn't know, you can press on this triangle there, and that will actually expose all the ArtNet that's coming in and out. And just for example, I'll go here into live, and I'll take channel 605. We'll go through the patching here in just a moment. I'm going to set that at 50%, and all of a sudden you kind of see that yellow universe 11 kind of glow when I make a change. I'll do it again, and you can see how that changes briefly, and that just shows that there's activity versus subnet 6 there is flashing quite a bit because there's a lot of traffic on there right now. I'll click again here on universe 11, and I'll do this again. I'll change that, and you can see the attribute values there change, and I'll go to full, and you can see it change there as well. And I'll do it one last time, and you'll see that both of those change, and it's because it's using a 16-bit value for that DMX parameter. But as far as the setup, we just set a universe here that we're listening to, and then from there we're patching channels within that. So I'll go ahead and close that. Now we'll go ahead and show the fixture profile in ETC that we have set up. So I'll go into patch, and then under here I'll go into fixtures, and under here you'll see I've created one called Resolume Simple Layer for our media player. And I've just got these attributes set here really simply. And so you'll see the first channel is intensity, 16-bit channel 1 and 2. Crossfade is set as an 8-bit value, which is 13. Image brightness is 3 and 4. Image adjustment control 5 and 6. Playback speed 7 and 8. And then image saturation 9 and 10. And this is, you'll see there's gaps. That's just because I took what was our large control and turned it into a simpler control. But this is just a homemade fixture, and this is controlling at the layer level. The big thing is that there's thousands of parameters within Resolume you can control, and these are the only ones that are relevant to me that I'm grabbing all the time, and sometimes even less than that. If we look here at the full one there, you see there's 32 channels in this blueprint. And you see that I've got red, blue, green, and zoom, and saturation, and hue, and pattern tilt, and focus, and other attributes that I realize that I don't generally need to use, at least in how I use media or Resolume for media playout. So that's the simple profile there. And then what I can do is all of my fixtures are in the 600 range. So you can see over here, expand this a little bit. So I've got 600, 601, 602, 603, 604, 605 are my simple Resolume layers, and I'll show you how that maps over here in just a second. So when we come up here, we've got these various layers, and we'll use this one, for example. I just labeled this one 605 motion graphics. And so channel 605 controls the attributes we just talked about on this layer. 604, 603, 602, and there's some other ones that are collapsed up above. But at the end of the day, I've just mapped those out to each one of these. You do need to map those manually. So the way we do that is I'll go under Shortcuts and click on Edit DMX. And then it brings up all of these areas that you can then assign a DMX value to. And if you look closely here, you'll see that it says L1, that's Lumiverse 1, C200, that's channel 200. And as you can see there, I've labeled that as channel 603. And if we look here in EOS 603 is 11, because that's the universe that we're actually outputting on as universe 11. And it starts at channel 200. And so when I click on this one right here, you can say select that parameter. And we have all these options. And so in this case, we're selecting the entire layer. So anything within this layer. The Lumiverse we're listening to is Lumiverse 1, which we've mapped to be subnet 11. The channel 200, and then the range 0 to 1. And then you can see it set to 16-bit. And so that's how we're doing things like the control here. What this controls is whatever is selected here. So this is actually controlling the alpha of that specific channel. But if you just want to think about that as bringing that layer in and out, overly simplified, that's what we're doing there. You can see here, this is our crossfade level. So when I click there, you'll see, or what they call the transition duration. And so again, the target is by position. The Lumiverse is 1. It's channel 212. The range is 0 to 10. And we're not doing 16-bit precision on this. So that gives you an idea of how we can map specific channels to do different things. Once I was working on a console that did not support OSC. And so what we actually did was our clip selection. So you can click here on the clip selection. And then what you do is you'll send a DMX value over, and then you can assign that. And so what I had it was that between DMX 0 and 10 would be the first clip, 11 to 12, or 11 to 19 was the second, 20 to 29 was the third, and so on and so forth. And so you could actually use DMX or ArtNet more accurately to control even clip selection. But when you've got a console that supports OSC, the thought is if you've got a value that might need to fade or transition, that's when you would use DMX. If you want a value that's going to be a static fixed value, you're going to take a clip. That's where OSC comes in. So we'll hop into that right now. I'll just hit escape to exit. I'll go to shortcuts and we'll go to OSC. And now that we're in OSC, you see it changes to a different color. And so when I click here, you'll see that the OSC outputs, there's actually two options available here. The first option is composition / layers / 3 / clips / 1 / connect. And the second is composition selected clip connect. And so you'll see various attributes or different parameters will often have more than one. And often there'll be something, the first one here, layer 3 clip 5 connect, is very explicitly this specific layer in this specific column. Versus the other way is here we're going to do a composition select the selected clip and connect that. Another example here, we can go over to transport. If I click on transport, you'll see here there's an option, layer 4, clip 4, transport type, or composition selected track transport type, and passing an integer 0 through 5. And so that's how you figure out what the OSC commands are to adjust any attribute in here. I'll press escape to cancel out of that. And then I'll show you a couple ways we control that. The first is I've got this magic sheet, and this has got the layers for the clip selection. And so this is the 605, 604, 603, 602, which corresponds with those. And then the columns here go across. Looks like we've got a little bug there. But clip D1 all the way through D12, which corresponds to these columns. And just for layer sake, we call it layer A, B, C, and D. And then so this is A3 is layer A, clip 3. And the way these are set up is these are going to actually write those into the queues themselves. So if we come over here into the queue stack and we go up here, you'll see in the execute, it sends string composition layer 4 clip 4 select, which is here. So layer 4 clip 4 select right there. And so if I click off of this and then I do a go to queue over here. So I go to queue 2101, enter. It retriggers that OSC, and you see it crossfades into layer 4, column 4, which is what that command works off of. Again, in my magic sheet here, my magic sheet is based off of these macros, write them into the execute column of a queue so they play back on the queue stack. To show you what that looks like here, that looks like 6615. So we'll go to the macro editor, and I'll go 6615, and you'll see clear command, queue, execute string, clear text, and then it puts in composition layer 4, clip 4, connect, as we expect. We do show control, disable those, but the mode is foreground or blank, so that it pastes in there. So that's an example of how we control Resolume using OSC within the queues. Obviously, for the ArtNet or DMX controls, those just show up as regular channels. To show you what that looks like, I'll go to live channel 605, and then we'll go to the ML controls. And so you'll see we've got intensity, crossfade, brightness, image saturation, color, adjust contrast, playback speed. And all of these really just depend on what attributes you're going to need to adjust in your playback scenario. And so we've trimmed it down to this, and I'm going to say 90% of the time I'm working with intensity, crossfade, and playback speed, and rarely am I even adjusting these parameters. But just so you can see that those exist there. Now, what also comes up is there a way for me to trigger it just with a macro? So it's not programmed in as an execute here where we're sending a string, but is there a way you can make a magic sheet where you push a button and it triggers a Resolume layer or a Resolume action? And the biggest place for that is something like a busking scenario. So I've got an example here of macro 34, for example. So macro 34 here, it's simply using send string, and then this is a different OSC string that I was sending. But let's just grab one from here, and we'll do a live little demonstration. So I'll come in here. I'm going to choose, we'll choose this one so you can see it's composition, layers, 4, clips, and 8 connect. So now here within EOS, I'll go edit, and then I'll clear this whole thing out. And then again, shift Y or shift about brings up the search, and I'll put in the word string, and you can see send string is there. So I'll press enter to select that. It brings up the box to enter my command. So I'll just do composition, layers with an S, layers 4, and then clips with an S, and then 8, and then connect. And then press enter, and then enter again so that it terminates that line. And then I'll click done on soft keys. I'll go back into live, and when I go macro 34, let's get this out of edit mode. So when I go back to macro 34 and press enter, why didn't you do that? Okay, a little bit of debugging here to figure out what was going on. So it wasn't triggering the way I thought it should. So tab 99 is your friend. When I hit macro 34, you'll see what it's sending. And what I omitted is that it needs a string value here. So I'm going to go to OSC. We'll go back to that clip selection, and you see it's looking for an integer of a 0 or a 1. And so the way we pass that in here, I'll click on a different clip. Back in EOS, go into macro 34, and all I did was have an equal 1. So it's composition layers for clip 8 connect equals 1 to pass that integer value that it was looking for. And so now when we go back into live and I go macro 34, enter, you see it changes the clip selection right there. And again, that works with any other parameter you want. So I can click here and go to shortcuts, OSC, and this blend mode, I can click on that, and you can see that it's got those parameters. So I'm going to go and edit. I'll make a copy here of 34. So we're going to copy 34 to 35, and then I'll edit macro 35. And we're going to make that composition layer for clip 8. And then we're going to go video mixer blend mode. And again, this takes an integer 0 through 59. And I'm just going to make this 35 to match the number of the macro. And I'll press enter to save that in. And then soft key for done. Back into live. And then again, I'll just escape out of that. And so now when I go macro 35, enter, you'll see that that changed the blend modes to overlay. And so that's how you can control those parameters. Unfortunately, they don't document anywhere exactly what the integer values are, but by and large, they are literally just progression through here with a zero-based indexing. So the very first option will be 0. Same for things here like transport, that's 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So those are some examples there of how you do that with OSC commands. Again, if I'm going to send it from a macro and I wanted to make this a button, say on a magic sheet or a direct select, you'll use the send string / syntax. However, when you're doing it as a queue execute here, the way we set those up is a little bit different. Just to walk through a few more things about how I typically use this when we're programming songs where we're firing content for, say, an LED wall. We'll sit here with a song, and we'll have various cues here. And so the first one here triggers something regarding the lyric playback system, but the next one here, you'll see compositions, layers 1, clip 1, and we'll make this a little bit bigger. Let's do this. And so you can see that we've got transport type 2, which sets the playback to SMPTE since we run time code. And then that's our connect, which basically effectively fires the queue. And then because the ending of our songs aren't exactly always receiving time code, like they'll stop time code early and then free flow out at the end of the song, we do 2 more OSC commands. The first one is transport type 0. So it takes it from something that would be following time code. So this would be following time code, and then it switches to timeline, which is some people just call free play. So that means it's running uninhibited by time. And then the next one sets the transport position behavior mode, play mode 4, which is this one here, to play once and hold. So that way when it gets to the end, it doesn't loop, which the default is to loop. It will just play through the end and then pause on that last frame. We always have an extra minute of content that goes beyond the end of the song, so we've got plenty of time. So we almost never hit that pause part, but that pause is just a fail-safe so that we don't accidentally loop the content because it's not designed to look or do that functionality. So there's that. Let me give you a couple last things here on our StreamDeck that we use to control it as well. On our StreamDeck, these ones relate to Resolume. So this takes whatever the currently selected clip is, and so when I fire this one, it will set it to timecode, so it will sync up with timecode. And here is the command for that. Really what we're doing is we're running a macro on the ETC itself, so we're not even using the Resolume plugin. Within Companion, we're actually triggering a macro that's running on ETC, and we'll show you that. So we'll go into that one. And you can see here it is, send string, composition, select the clip transport position, playback behavior, play mode 4 equals 0 in this case. Same thing, here's our free run. So that fires macro 10,000, which is transport type 0. So this is how we go from transport type 0 to transport type, or play mode 0. And then we've got a video play pause, we got a video loop. So this again comes into that concept of, are we looping it, or are we going to loop the video or pause it when we reach the end? And then when we are running under time code here, you see that there's an offset time. And here we can adjust the currently selected offsets by these as well. And this is using an OSC command. So this is sending an integer to this specific OSC destination. There is in StreamDeck, there is a Resolume plugin, but it doesn't have all of the features or all of the OSC commands implemented. So we also have this one that uses just the generic OSC. So we can send any generic OSC command to it. And in this case, we're saying increment or decrement 1 frame off the time code. Also, in other videos, you'll see that as I talk about time code, what we'll typically do is each video, instead of starting at 0, all of our time codes is based off of hours. So hour 1 is song 1, hour 2 is song 2, and so forth. Our system roughly has 10 frames of latency between hearing the time code, interpreting the time code, playing back the video, and it actually making it through all the video processing up to the screen. So when our video content creator creates stuff that's perfectly synced with audio, we end up having to move it 10 frames earlier so that it synchronizes properly the way they want it to. And so these 6 here are our Resolume controls that we use on the StreamDeck. One other thing I should mention here, I just realized that Resolume was written using British English as opposed to American English. And so what gets me every once in a while is the spelling of things like behavior. Behavior has an O-U-R, where in American English it would just be O-R. So if your OSC commands aren't triggering the way you expect it to, on some of those British spellings that have O-U-R versus O-R, just check for those very carefully. It hangs me up every once in a while because I grew up speaking American English and spelling American English. So just be aware of that difference when you're doing it as well. And if you have any questions, feel free to leave them down in the comments, and I'll be happy to make a video for those too. All right, take care now.